Welcome to the Consultant's Way podcast, where we explore the world of professional services consulting. Hosted by Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, each episode delivers expert insights, real-world stories, and interviews with top consultants to help you refine your consulting skills.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us again today on the Consultant's Way podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Paluska, and that's Dean McMann.
And I'm not your host.
No, and he's also a host. And today we're joined with Andrew Cappiello. Andrew's a leader of professional services at CaptivateIQ, and we're excited to have you on the show today, Andrew, and learn a little bit more about a topic that you're very passionate about. But before we dive into that, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and about CaptivateIQ.
Yeah, and if you could tell us about your childhood, any early crushes, anything that'll help, you know.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you both for having me on. My name's Andrew Cappiello. Dean, just the first part of my life, they said I didn't talk much, but that's mostly because I was an infant. So you can only do that around 2-3 years old. But that's what my parents tell me. But yeah, my name is Andrew Cappiello. I'm the director of professional services for a software company, CaptivateIQ. We are an ICM, or incentive compensation management software. But I've spent the last 10 years or so in the professional services space, specifically in the SaaS industry. Before my time in the SaaS space, I was actually a teacher. I taught 6th, 7th, 8th grade social studies and 7th, 8th grade English, and did that for about a year. And then made the journey over to the SaaS world. I actually was recruited by another former teacher to become an implementation specialist and project manager. And that was really my introduction. And since then, I've never really looked back. And it's been a lot of fun the last 10 years being a part of some growing and scaling companies that have gone on to be publicly traded. And yeah, for me, it's a lot of fun being in the PS world and getting to grow teams and build different relationships.
You know, you're one of the few people we know that have made the transition from teaching. I always find that really exciting about you. Yeah, that must have been a big change.
Yeah, I think it was originally I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do long term, and somebody had suggested to me, look at corporate training. You have the education background, you can do training, you like speaking to people, and that didn't really pan out, but what I did find was project management implementation, and really found the niche that I loved. And arguably, some people said it's going to be easier teaching adults how to use software. I'm not sure about that. Sometimes it's just as challenging as teaching a 6th, 7th, 8th grader some social studies. So that the jury is still out on that one.
Yeah, sometimes the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders might be more receptive to it. You've got people that are all different levels of resistance.
Yeah. Well, we teach adults all the time, so yeah, we agree. It's tough.
Yeah. So, Andrew, the topic that we were discussing a little bit before this was, and you've got a lot of experience with, is I'm going to call it the implementation trap that sometimes our professional services organizations fall into at SaaS companies. And how do we break free of that? How do we expand how we view our role and responsibility? And ultimately, how do we grow that business and our margin? If you don't mind, dive a little bit deeper into that topic and kind of give us the 1,000-foot view of your perspective on that, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, and it is a topic that I've seen play out at a number of different companies that I've been at, but also you see it playing out in the industry quite a bit too. And what tends to happen is these companies, these software companies, they want to get their product out to the market. And usually it starts as you have a salesperson doing the implementation or a CSM doing the implementation. And then one day they have this great idea of like, we should just have somebody else go and do this so we can focus on selling or upselling the accounts. And that's usually the birth of the transition specialist, the implementation specialist role. And then from there, it continues to grow and grow, and you grow the headcount, right? And what ends up happening is there comes a time where you either hit market saturation or your team is just doing kind of the same thing over and over again. And it creates a problem. You have people leaving because they're not growing their career and they're tired of just kind of doing the same software implementation over and over again. Or your customer base changes, right? Your customer base goes from maybe the small mom and pop shops or the mid-market accounts to the upper end of the mid-market to the enterprise. And the demand becomes, we don't just want somebody to put this software in our hands. We have people who are smart enough and bright enough to do that, but we want somebody who's going to guide us along this journey and make some suggestions to us of maybe we have a process that's broken that doesn't fit with this software and we'd like a recommendation. And usually what I see play out is companies will want to grow and be able to offer those types of services either ad hoc or as an expert service model, or they want to offer it within implementation, right? And so what ends up happening is you have two kind of tracks that happen. The implementation specialist adds another job to their hat. They're already the project manager, the doer, the builder, and all the other ones. Or you can start to separate out of like, maybe we have these really senior people. We want to retain them and hold their talent here. Maybe we can have them go and do some actual consulting. And so you see that play out with companies. And then what also can start to happen is you realize that you can do an offshore model and have builders who are a little bit lower cost. And you can charge more for that consulting model that you want to actually implement with your customers. So it's interesting how it plays out. And really it goes from, is that company in startup mode? Is that company in growth mode? And like, where do they actually want to land? And what is the goal of their professional services department? The startups, their goal is we need to just bring revenue in, and we probably don't care about gross margin. At some point, if that goal of that company is to become acquired or go public, it starts to become really important to take a look at the gross margin. Being able to offer those get that higher margin for the expert work becomes inherently more important.
Do you find that it also helps with stickiness?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Dean. So I had a conversation today actually about this, and one of the things you have to think about is that if you're continuing to engage a SaaS customer, they have the product, they probably know how to use it, but how do you continue to drive value in it if you only have maybe one product or two products, or they've bought everything up front? So what you have to do is really continue to iterate on that. How are you helping them implement new features you're releasing? How are you guiding them in the industry itself? What is the industry doing? The standards? What are the factors that they're doing as their business? Are they growing? Are they going to acquire another company? How does your software fit and play with that? And so having a customer who is engaging with your experts over and over again will help you to retain that customer long run. And so you're getting better margins by charging a little bit more for that expert service that you're providing. But you're also developing a customer for life. Whether they continue that service and that consulting model with you or not, you're making them more sticky by they understand the features that are coming out. They understand the adoption level. They know how to better use the software. You're continuing to help them tune that as well. And so they continue to use it and get better at it and get more ROI from the software itself.
It also humanizes the company. They spend time with a human, and the human solves problems. We think as the land grab's over, right? There's just so much opportunity, not just for revenue and margin, which are great, and we want that, but changing the relationship so that they really begin. They call us for advice. It just changes everything, and we're always shocked how few companies, not the PS organizations, but the companies themselves understand that and see that. It's not normal for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the implementation specialist type role specifically, that person or persons are tasked with going from onboarding to onboarding to onboarding, right? Which it creates a transactional relationship. Now, I know folks who love that. They love working with a different customer every week, every month, every quarter, whatever that might be. But a majority of times when I'm talking to folks and trying to grow people in their career, one of the things I often hear is, I just want to have a book of business that I can maintain and build some relationships with, right? And it becomes more than just about the advice I can provide them. It becomes about how are they feeling fulfilled in their career? And how are we helping that person that's at your company grow in their career so they actually could go do consulting maybe somewhere else, or the best case is they stay, they've developed a relationship with your key accounts, and now that customer is really happy, that employee is really fulfilled. And it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, and there's such a big difference in that model, though, because you have your doers that are focused on how do I get more efficient at this, and then you have what we're describing here as the advisor, and how do I expand my footprint and relationship and my ability to impact the broader business problems that my clients are dealing with. How do you view that evolution, or is that two different types of talent and roles? Or I mean,
is it a career path, or is it two different in your view?
Yeah.
And it can be both, but how are you doing it between, hey, I want these people doing this and I want these people doing this?
Yeah, and so first I want to say there are folks that I know that are really technical individuals, and they just want to build, right? And they love building software, and they want to continue to stay in that role and grow their career there. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there are quite a few people in PS organizations that are doing this building that have this really unique skill set. Not only do they know the industry, they know the software, and they feel like they want to do more with it. So I think it's important to judge the individual by what they want to do with their career, right? One of the things I'll always ask my managers and my individual contributors is like, what do you actually want to do here? What do you want to provide to your client? If they say, hey, I want to just build really great software, that's okay. And you can grow your career in that doer role. But a majority of the folks that want to grow and get into either leadership or mentorship, they'll say, I want to do more. Like I want to advise, right? And that's when the switch starts flipping, where you say, okay, how do you actually go and do that? You know, all this great knowledge about our software, but what are you giving to the customer beyond that, right? And that's when you start to see the light bulbs go off, where they say, well, actually, maybe I should make a suggestion to them about this process that I saw that's broken. And you empower that person. You say, yeah, go do that. See what happens. Let me know how that conversation went. So I've seen that play out quite a bit. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that not everyone will grow from that doer role to a consulting role. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think the biggest thing that I see playing out here is when there is a business that's growing and scaling, there is a need for both, right? And I think that's important for folks who are in those implementation roles who like that to understand, where's the business you're at going? Are they going to, use Gen AI to build this software in the next 5 to 10 years? And you'll have to become a consultant. Or is that role going to be around forever because the software is so complex and so niche that you'll have a career there? So I think it's really important to talk to your people about that as well, of where's the company going, and leading them and letting them know and advising your employees on where the company is going and what the company's goals are to align them into that career path of, hey, do you want to be a consultant or do you want to stay here? And neither is a bad path.
Yeah, exactly. But one challenge is I'm an expert in the product, but I want to keep getting paid more. And that journey is going to make you hold me hostage, because you're eating up so much comp that I could have 2 junior people do the work that has now become simpler that used to do. So I always find that as a bit of a heartbreak for those who don't want to become more complex, but want to be paid more and more. We all want to be paid more. I mean, I'm not holding that against them.
Yeah.
And even you, who I think donate your salary back every month, want to be paid more.
That's right. Yeah. I work for, essentially I'm a nonprofit employee. No, I'm just kidding. But it's true, Dean. Right. And I think and what I've seen happen and play out is that some of those technical resources go and start a boutique partnership with a SaaS company, where they can just do that technical work, maybe at a lower cost. And then they open their own business, and they're become a certified partner with a company where they can actually go and do that technical work. And that's okay, right? But I think it's also to the point of what we expect and what we want from a business standpoint is we want them to grow and advise because they have this unique technical knowledge on your software. And so my push to my team and to my employees is always think about how you can do your job better, and not only better from a building standpoint, but from an advisement standpoint. And usually what I see is once you kind of flip that switch on for them and folks actually start to think about it, they realize they have more consulting knowledge on the software and on the industry than they maybe have inherently realized.
Yeah. No, and so I completely agree. You've talked about communicating and understanding their intentions and making sure that we're designing career paths and roles for the team members based on what they want, but also what our organization needs. And we need both as we evolve as a company. Anything else on the overall kind of talent management topic, whether that's hiring or development or otherwise, that you've seen companies do extraordinarily well, or you've seen people make mistakes with?
Yeah. Great question, Anthony. And one of the things that you normally see play out is the companies will hire what I will call industry experts or admin type folks. So when I was working for an HRIS company, we would hire folks who had payroll knowledge, right? Or HR knowledge. Working for CaptivateIQ, we have folks who've come from incentive compensation roles at various companies. And a lot of these folks are hired in because they have expertise on this very niche thing. What tends to happen is when you put them in this implementation role, they're good in it for a period of time, but they need to grow into that consulting role. And sometimes there's some challenges there, right? That's sometimes these folks have come over and have hired and have been at the company 3, 4, 5 years, and they don't want to grow into that. So that is a challenge. And there is an evolution that happens where you do have some of this old guard, new guard that does end up playing out depending on the maturity of the company and how quickly you want to move and do that. But that does happen. So what I've done in the past years is recognizing when you're at that point and recognizing that it's okay to bring in somebody who doesn't have industry experience,
Right.
but they have really good consulting skills. They have really good project management skills. And that's when you start to up level your team from a consulting or solution architecture standpoint of not only are you have this great group of industry knowledge, but now you have this outside knowledge that's very different. And then combining those two with the old guard and the new guard becomes really powerful, because you're challenging the new guard. You're challenging the new guard to understand the software and the space, and you're challenging the old guard to grow it and be more consultative. And that's a really fun area to play in, and you see that work really, really nicely.
I think it's great that you've been able to do that because a lot of people really struggle about that. One of the things I've noticed when you bring an industry expert in is they're so used to not having any authority that it's difficult for them to take, hey, no, you don't need to come ask me where the restroom is today, right? You go ahead and do that.
Yeah. And absolutely, like, again, if you're hiring somebody from, I will call it an admin type role or a very specific role that they're doing, usually they're reporting up the chain, maybe a number of different ways. And when you ask them to put the consulting tool belt on, where now they're having to maybe have a tough conversation with a VP of finance, a VP of technology, a CIO, a CFO, a lot of times that's a really big growth opportunity for them. They have not had that level of conversation before based on the reporting structure that they were in another organization. So yeah, that's one of the big challenges we see of how do you grow into that. And where I think it really starts is how do you teach people to say no, right? And I think when you have these admin type roles or these folks who are used to being maybe lower down or mid-level in the org chart, having these high-level C-suite conversations, they're really scared to say no or, hey, that's not a good idea, right? And once those folks can cross that barrier of maybe not saying no, Mr. or Mrs. CFO or Mr. or Mrs. CIO, but they can say, hey, I wouldn't recommend doing that. And here's kind of why. Here's an alternative solution, right? Once you can hear that and that verbiage coming out of their mouths, man, that's such an opportunity for them. And you can see that growth happening either live fire if you're on the call with them, or if you're listening to that call later on, or they call you up afterwards and say, I said no, and it was awesome. And that usually breaks it wide open for them.
And that's what the client wants. They want experts, right? They need someone who's got, if they knew what to do, and I've been advising now since World War II, and clients don't know what to do. If they knew what to do, they'd be doing it, right?
Dean, I can't say I've ever gotten off a call with a customer where they said, we love that Andrew just does what we tell him to do. I don't think I've ever had that in the last 10 years, right? I'll probably get one tomorrow.
Now that I know you well, I don't think you do what people tell you to do. I think you're an independent thinker.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And that was a journey for me though, as well, like starting out, coming from education and going into project management and learning that myself. And once it hits, it's hard to go back actually, once you learn that skill or that tool. But yeah, I've never had a customer call me and say, we love that Anthony just does what we tell him to do. It's almost 99.9% times the opposite. Like, we would love for Andrew or Anthony or Dean to tell us that we're doing something wrong. And I have that conversation on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, client satisfaction is not necessary, is not doing what the client asks you to do or tells you to do. It is making sure the client gets the outcome. And that breaking that mindset and mentality, especially for people that are technical experts that actually have a lot of this knowledge, where they're doing things that they know is going against the best interests of the client, but it's easier to just say yes and do it and assume the customer is always right than to have the more difficult conversation to help advise them on, hey, this actually could generate much better outcomes for you if X, Y, and Z occurred.
Yeah, and that's so critical when you're deploying a piece of software, right? Where I've seen it play out where you have folks that say, well, the customer wants to do this, we're going to go do it. And now you're down the rabbit hole of like, our software doesn't do that. Let's create a workaround. Let's get engineering involved. And, 5 days later, you have basically a jumbled piece of software, but you're like, well, it does what the customer wants. Like, yeah, is it going to bring them that success? Probably not, right? Or arguably, it might make them happy that you went and did that and you put in the effort, but it's not actually what they need, right? And Anthony, I think you bring up a great point there.
Yeah, one of the things we're always pushing people is don't start with what they said, back them up to what they're trying to do, right? They're guessing this will solve it. Well, what are we trying to solve? How does this fit to our overall outcome? And that's a good skill for people to develop. And it's not too uncomfortable, right? Like, let me understand. Yeah, so that's good. That's good.
Yeah. And Dean, I think that gets back to the saying no part, right? You don't have to actually say the word no, we're not going to do that. Hey, tell me a little bit more about why you guys are doing this thing, or tell me a little bit more about how that process works, right? Just general terms that we use every day as consultants that we don't think that folks don't understand that or know that, but it's learned behavior, right? And arming those folks with those questions and how to get to that point is so important. And I think that's really how you see that switch flip for them.
Yeah. You were talking about that. I was reminded that a new CEO client calls another CEO client and asks about me personally. And the one they called worked with us a whole bunch of times. You know who that is. And she said, oh, you'll love it, but he's very direct. He's going to tell you the truth. And if you don't want the truth, don't bring them in. So I thought that was great. Yeah. They're gonna make sure you hear the truth. Yeah.
To me, that's the highest compliment you could get, especially in the consulting world.
Yeah.
Hey, they might not like what they have to say, but you should probably listen to it, right?
Yeah, as my father said when I got into it, he goes, "It's a good, clean business." You could hear him. It's a good, clean. You'll be okay. It's a good, clean business.
Yeah.
So, this has been great. Kind of as we begin to wrap up, as you think about everything you've done and everything we've talked about, is there a couple of key takeaways that you'd want anybody in your role to get about how to get the organization doing these more valuable things?
I think it's really important to understand it's a process and it takes time, but it doesn't have to be a long drawn out process, right? I think the first thing you always do is look at, who is on your team, what does your team structure look like, what is your clientele, and then what are the goals of the business? So I think if you really start there, you can make some of these moves really quickly because there's a really high chance you have the right people in your organization. They might just not be in the right roles. They might even be in another department. So I think it's really important for folks to understand that this can take time and you can move very slowly and methodically through this. But this is a change you can make in 6 months, 8 months, maybe not 110%. But if you make this incrementally, you'll start to see the benefits of it with your customers, with your own employees very, very quickly. So I think it's really important just to understand that you don't have to really draw out this process and have it be perfect. And I think if there's anything I've learned in the 10 years in professional services is perfection is sometimes the enemy, right? And so it's okay to make those changes. And I tell my team this every day, go try something. The worst case is that you mess it up. That's actually the best case in my head is go try it, do it. And if it doesn't work for your company or industry, pivot, right? And I understand that's really hard in some of our some larger companies, but in some smaller, nimble software companies, go try something. If it doesn't work, course correct, make an adjustment, kind of as you go. And I think that's one of the key things I try to do wherever I go, as an employee.
Well, if you
myself.
think about, just to reinforce that, if you think about the giant consulting firms, they are actually all testing new thought across their entire organization, but people think they have the right to do it. And then they know what to do if it doesn't work. And I love that you're doing that, right? Hey, come on. How are we going to know if the new idea works? Try it. The worst thing that happens, we lose a little bit, time, but we get better, right? So that's great. So anything else?
Yeah.
These aren't trick questions. Don't worry.
No, you're good. Yeah, I know they're not trick questions. I'm just trying to think. I think really at the end of the day, I also just try to have a lot of fun with it, right? I think consulting, there's a lot of high stakes and high pressure that we can get ourselves into in professional services, consulting, whatever role within PS you want to talk about. You're dealing high frequency with customers, escalations, software, whatever that might be. But I think it's really important to have some fun with it too. Like, you have such a good opportunity in front of you. You get to meet so many great people, so many great professionals. I think if you're not having fun while you're doing it, you're probably not in the right spot. At least that's my motto.
And I don't think you can be successful if you're not enjoying it, because it comes across in every interaction that you have with your clients, with your team, and motivating everybody. Every step of a role as a leader or as a consultant is motivating somebody else to take action, to do something different, and to get the outcomes that they're looking for. And if you're not passionate about it, if you're not excited about it, then you're not going to be as successful as you want to be in that process.
And like you said, go do something else. Because this is a great business. It's a great business. Yeah. All right. Well,
and I think that comes across on your customers too, right? If you're having fun, whether it's a stressful environment or not, if you're having some fun, you can bring some humor to it. Dean's brought humor to every conversation we've had. So I appreciate that, right? If you're not having fun doing it, your customers will see that. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, they need to be encouraged, right? Yeah, they need to be encouraged, and humor and fun, let them know, hey, I got this, don't worry about it. Well, I'm going to get you there. We're going to go together. So that's great. Listen, thanks so much. We really appreciate it. You've really given us a lot of great advice, and we look forward to having you back on.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure. Really, thanks again. I can't say enough.
Wow, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that because like he ended with, and you asked him about the being fun, he is fun.
Oh, yeah.
He brings energy and joy to the work.
He didn't even talk till he was a toddler, he said.
Yeah, and my family wanted to know why I didn't talk more.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. But, and really good advice. The thing that he said that I liked the absolute most was go ahead and try.
Yeah.
Because we have so many clients that need everything baked before they move.
Yeah.
And that risk aversion doesn't actually get the experimentation going fast enough. It's kind of like bake it, it didn't work perfectly because it never does, rebake it instead of this iterative try stuff. So I was really impressed by that.
No, I agree. And we should spend some additional time on that topic, because I do think we, as corporate America, have over-incented risk aversion.
Oh my God.
And it permeates through everything. And so there's just not enough people that are willing to take a chance to try. And in consulting, there's so many, I mean, you gave the example of the big firms, but there's just so many opportunities to try something different, advance our thinking on something just a little bit further, and then through our relationship and the rapport that we're building, course correct if it isn't the right path. But at least we've tried to expand that, and that's the only way we can continue to innovate, be thought leaders in on these topics, and truly be able to drive the outcomes we're looking for.
Yeah, and I think this gets back to our central why we do all this is to equip the PS people to act independently and to know what to do, right? And to break those natural tendencies of not feeling ownership or not feeling, I hate to use the word competent, but successful at doing stuff. So that's what we're all about anyway. Anyway, great job. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you guys for joining.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you all. And please like, subscribe, follow us if you want to see more of this kind of content. We're going to continue posting once a week and up that to twice a week coming soon. Also, if you have any thoughts, suggestions on future guests for us, please reach out to Dean or myself on LinkedIn or connect with us at podcast@consultantsway.com. Looking forward to hearing from everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.